welcome to the world's greatest Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I'm your co-host, Mike Cowell. As always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be taking a look at some Spidey comics from December of 1987.
That's right, and this week we are joined by G.I. Jolie.
Well, hello!
Woo!
Yay!
Hi.
She's only got 4 senses, but she's still with us, right?
Yeah.
All right. Also here, Bex Luthor.
So does that make Jolie Daredevil now? That's cool.
I guess so, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah?
Daredevil, but the smelling Daredevil.
Of smells. Is there a superhero that can...
That can't smell?
I don't think there is yet, no, but we can get on that.
Okay.
All right, and also joining us this week, Barry Andrew Helmer. Thanks for coming back, Barry Andrew.
Andrew Helmer.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All
Like
right,
Robert Downey
yeah.
Jr. You gotta say the whole thing.
I feel like I want to preface my entrance to this Spider-Man podcast by saying I have not seen No Way Home.
Oh, so we shouldn't spoil it then.
Okay, I won't say anything.
All right.
I had tickets, and I live in a busy city, and I had them for opening night, and it was just the week when everything was going nuts here, and I just, at the last minute, I was like, can't do it.
Yeah.
And so it haunts me. Haunts me to this day.
All right.
Well-
so no way home spoilers in this one.
I kind of doubt like that it was an adaptation of this week's story. So I think
No.
Hey, that's what they're doing next. Wouldn't that be great? But anyway.
No, what?
So last week we reviewed Craven's Last Hunt, which was a story that crossed over into every Spider-Man comic for the first time ever. And as usual, when an idea works, what do? They milk it, right? They run it into the ground. So following up immediately on its heels, we have Life in the Mad Dog Ward parts 1, 2, and 3, all written by... Is that a joke?
Oh, excuse you, Parker.
Yeah, that was a joke.
At least Jolie can't smell it. Okay. So
That was a joke.
Life in the Mad Dog Ward by Nocenti and Cynthia Martin with 3 different anchors, which we'll talk about later. But I bought this when it came out, so I've read it many a time. And we've reviewed Nocenti stories before in the Web of Spider-Man annuals, I believe, maybe other places as well. But this is an interesting story. Josh, you could tell us what happens in part 1.
Yeah, okay. So we are introduced to this new family that we've never seen before. The mom, right away, you can see that she's talking to somebody, possibly off screen, but then it's kind of revealed that she's talking to these shadow creatures that are kind of like covering the walls of the kitchen. And her kids kind of interrupt her to see if she's okay. And they're like, you know what? We're going to finally do it. We're going to escape what's going on. We don't really know what's going on. But they decide that they're going to pack their bags. They're going to go on the run and like start a new life by themselves. And as they're walking out the door, their father or her husband, shows up from work and stops them and tells them to go back inside. He starts yelling and gets physical, and she grabs a gun and calls the cops, and it turns into this huge domestic fight. And he ends up grabbing the phone from her and talking the police officer down, and the police officer doesn't come to the house, but immediately afterwards he gets a phone call, and it's his... actually, I think this might be the arranger, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. So the arranger actually ends up calling him and says that, like, we finally need to do something about your wife. I'm sorry, this is the last straw, but you need to take her away. And that's pretty much where that part of the story ends. We cut over to a like asylum, essentially, in the Mad Dog Ward of the asylum, as they're pinning this guy down and injecting him. And we learn that this scientist is doing like some sort of like almost like brainwashing, right? Like they're using kind of his illness against him, along with medication to kind of turn him into this killer that is essentially hypnotized. We cut back over to the Daily Bugle, and I mean, there's a bunch of nonsense going on. There's like a parade float that's falling or something. And Peter Parker seems like absolutely distracted. MJ's off in France doing a photo shoot. He was just buried alive, and the next day he's at work. Like, what the hell? Why didn't I take any time off in between this? So he's like completely out of it. He misses dinner with Aunt May and shows up right as like dessert's happening. He kisses her goodbye and leaves. And then as he's leaving, he runs into these kids who are chasing the ambulance that is going to the asylum. And they kind of like spill what's going on, like, hey, my mom's been taken away, and they're like, listen, kid, or, you know, Peter's like, listen, kids, you got to go back home with your dad where it's safe. You'll be able to go visit your mom later. She'll be okay. She just needs some rest, blah blah blah. And then he's like restless, up all night thinking about the kids, trying to convince himself that he doesn't have anything to do with it and keep himself out of it. But his heroic side takes the better of him, and he puts on his costume and he swings out of his apartment. Later, we catch up with the kids. They're on the rooftop of this asylum. They somehow chase the ambulance to this secret asylum, and their dad shows up, and the little boy pulls a gun on his dad, and the little girl, like the daughter, is kind of like stuck between the two. She doesn't think that her dad is evil, but she wants to see her mom and protect her and save her, and she ends up sounding the alarms, which allows all of the guards to show up. And just as we think that the kids are going to get taken away and he's going to get shot, Spidey shows up and he starts taking them out one by one. And he takes them all out, but he realizes that he missed one, and the last guy pushes the little girl off the window, so off the building ledge, so he can get away. Spidey swings down and catches her, but in the process hits his head against the side of an alleyway and gets knocked unconscious, and that is the end of this issue.
So let's talk about this issue before we move on, because
sure, yeah,
my impression of this story is it is actually really hard to describe what's going on, because there's a lot happening, but there's not really a lot of plot. It's more like there's a lot of stuff, but there's not a lot of plot. And I feel like I've read this many times, and there's parts of it I really like. Like, I like the tone. I like the kids. I like the situation that Peter Parker ends up getting himself into. But now that I've reread it, I don't know if it really adds up. I'm going to start by saying I'll just say quickly, the covers by Bill Sienkiewicz are incredible. You know, there weren't anything else. Yeah, there weren't like anything else that was being published at the time. Mm-hmm. But I have mixed feelings about the story. But Barry Helmer, I want to know what your impression is of the story. First, have you ever read it before?
No, had no idea what I was getting into.
Okay.
It was, right off the bat, it kind of grabbed me. Like, I felt like, like with the mom or Vicky talking to the shadows, I was like, oh, what the hell's going on here? I didn't think it was just going to be like, I didn't think the twist was just going to be she has mental health issues and there's no shadow things at all, and there's no research done into actual mental health issues or how they're treated or how any. So my initial excitement wore off pretty quick, but I it opens kind of cool and kind of like, what the hell's going on? And yeah, there's just so much stuff. There's so much stuff that goes nowhere, and that is particularly one of them. Like, I was just like, we didn't need to go into all that. Like, there was a quicker way to get to where they were going, and then like, so if there isn't a twist to it, it just ends up being like, Kingpin just doesn't want people who have mental health issues out on, like, married to his guys.
Right.
That's his plot.
Only he can have an ailing wife.
Yeah.
Right.
That's my thing.
Which is not I mean, again, in itself, it's not a bad idea, but it just, I just don't know if I like the way it turns out. But let's just talk about this issue. We have, again, the situation with the mother. We have the kids. I like the way Ann Nocenti writes kids. I think she's actually really good at it in a way. Mm-hmm. And again, everything she does feels like a good first draft. It's like someone could look at this and go, okay, you got a great idea here. Now you got to rewrite it, cut out half the crap. But there's so much going on and so much writing. Like there's good little moments in here, but a lot of it doesn't make sense. The kids that end up on the roof somehow, the actual G.I. Joe team that intervenes, you know what I mean? Like there's just little things like that.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Josh, what did you want to say?
Yeah, it starts off extremely strong. I'm completely invested in this family and the kids and what's going on with them. Right. I, again, was also thinking something supernatural was happening with the shadows on the wall. So, like, this is pretty cool, pretty interesting stuff. And then the second we jump over to the Daily Bugle, I'm just like, I'm gone. None of what is happening actually matters to the story or adds anything. Almost all of the dialogue in this scene is background characters talking about something that does not matter. Mm-hmm. It's so weird, and it's
the Daily Bugle.
It's especially jarring after reading Kraven's Last Hunt.
Good point.
And how minimalistic that was, where there were pages where there were like maybe 2 or 3 bubbles, and some of those bubbles had like one word in it. Like they let the art and the story tell itself rather than having like all of this nonsense thrown in to just have things happening. Like, did we need I don't get the point of the raid termite being stuck on the building, or like the dialogue between like 2 background characters of like, oh, what should we call this? What should we title this article? It's like, oh, we take the pictures first and we look and see what it's like. What? None of it like correlates. It would be different if like this story was about Peter like getting pictures to go with articles or something. Like it related somehow to what the background characters were talking about, because then we can like get a sense of what the Bugle life is like and how the dynamic is with all of these characters. But it added absolutely nothing to the story. It felt so weird. And then jumping back in when the kids show up again, it's really great. I love Peter kind of like being in like turmoil, like something. It's not my spider senses, but like something in my heart was telling me something is not right with the kids, and I need to investigate, or I'm not going to be able to sleep. So I really love all that stuff. The building, the rooftop scene is a little weird, and then. But again, I also like when Spidey shows up again and he's like counting down the bad guys. Yeah. Which is a really great moment because he counts down and then misses one. And then I think like later on in the next issue or possibly the next one, there's something about counting backwards, right? When he's like taking the medicine. So it's kind of like a nice connection, nice little moment. But yeah, this is definitely the strongest of the 3. And even then it kind of has a couple of like cracks in the foundation. There's a lot of stuff that just doesn't work for me in the issue, but overall I think I kind of enjoyed this one. I was like looking forward to this story. Right.
I exactly hear you. Right. It had a lot of promise, but let's see how it turns out. Jolie, what'd you think of this issue?
Only some cracks in the foundation. This is almost to me like a book that only like wrote about the cracks. It was all cracks for me. I couldn't focus on anything that was happening. Action would happen that wouldn't align with the next sort of like things that were supposed to drive the plot, which what is the plot? What's going on?
Good question.
Also, it doesn't. We talk about it a lot, and I'll say it in the context of like what the things that we say a lot about the books that have plots that don't work. And Nocenti's she's good at dialogue, I guess, but like it was almost as if all of the dialogue happened around no plot, which is weird. And
Right.
if you took Spider-Man out of the story, it would still be fine. Like Peter Parker and Spider-Man being present for whatever is happening is inconsequential to this woman being hospitalized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other than what we find out later about Kingpin's involvement in what is, I guess, called Pleasant Valley, where the Mad Dog ward is. So, spoiler.
It doesn't feel like a Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
Like,
agreed.
spoiler alert for the next 2 issues we're going to talk about, but like, yeah, none of it feels like it's supposed to be his story. Like, maybe Daredevil, like, more street level character, feels like
Frank Castle,
Spider-Man.
maybe.
Yeah, for sure. But it just seems
anyone. Moon Knight.
Right. 100%
Yeah.
Moon Knight.
That one actually would make more sense.
yeah.
It threw me for a loop so many times, like especially when we get to the rooftop and the kids are there after Peter tells them to like scram and the boy has a handgun.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they all immediately go to the roof? Like the dad runs into them up there and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?"
Yeah. Where'd you put your briefcase? Did you leave it in the car? Where did you park? Where are you even? How did you know where to go? Like, there's so many questions.
Them being like Aunt May's neighbors, like, you know, or at least in the neighborhood, is like a coincidence of like the most ridiculous degree.
Yeah.
Are
Also,
all of Aunt May's neighbors like Kingpin's goats?
Look, New York is huge, except in comic books where it's like 3 blocks.
Yeah.
What is this? What are we doing here? What's going on? Anne, my girl. I know. Me and you, just me and you, Anne. We're talking. What are you doing? What's going on? It's like, yeah, it's what Josh said. We just read Kraven's Last Hunt, and we were all talking about it, and Tim and I were talking about how it's one of the best Spider-Man stories of all time. And I get it. Whatever follows up wasn't going to be one of the best Spider-Man stories of all time.
But the worst?
But we could have tried. We could have. We could have given it a go. It's a lot of, there's a vision, there's a stylistic choice, and it just doesn't work for what the execution is. I'm with you guys. The family stuff at the beginning, I was like, where's this going to go? And then I was like, oh, no, the roof. Nowhere. It's going nowhere.
This is going to go to the roof.
It's just, we're just going to go into the ground. Yeah, the Peter stuff, it's so, this whole entire issue is just trying to get Peter into the asylum. That's all it does. That's what it's setting up. So it's like, well, we could easily have condensed these 3 issues into one, which, not great for a 3-part story. With Kraven's Last Hunt, there's 6 issues, and it's paced so well that it has to be 6 issues. This is a lot of fluff to fill out a 3-issue, 3-part series. That doesn't need to be there. Yeah, the whole Bugle thing, I think they're trying to make some sort of connection between nobody caring about little things versus Peter caring about little things. It doesn't hit. They're stretching, they're trying. It just doesn't work because they're like, oh no, this balloon, whatever it is like on the wall and nobody cares. It's like, well, yeah, that doesn't matter though. Like that's
Neither do I.
It's like, no. Here's the humans, balloons were very different levels of giving a shit. Yeah, and then they also just write out Mary Jane, very, very, just great. Good job, everybody. She doesn't need to be here. It's fine. Peter just spent 2 weeks missing, dead, but Mary Jane goes to Paris for a week, and they just got married. Okay, what a great partner. Like,
well, again, clearly written before they got married, right?
Yes. So just shelve it for a couple months, is what I'm saying, right? Like, if, at least with Kraven's Last Hunt, which was written, I assume, before the marriage, and they had to put the marriage in.
Right.
it puts the marriage in, it does it so well. It, like, almost naturally. Whereas this, they just write her out.
Right.
And Peter even mentions, he's like, last week I was dead. This week my wife's in France. Like, all right. Holy crap. We need some emotional stability here in Peter's life. And then even the interaction with him and the kids, it doesn't feel like Peter Parker to me.
Right,
It feels
I agree.
just like some guy. He's just like, don't worry, kids. Go back to your dad. Like, wouldn't Peter would ask more questions. He'd be like,
Yeah.
these kids seem terrified. I'm Spider-Man. Maybe I can help. Like,
Right.
it especially kids. Peter and kids is usually always like something that he desperately clings to. He's like, oh, children, innocence, like all this, like, me, superhero. I don't know. It falls very flat for me. It's, and where did the kid learn to hold a gun? Where did he get the gun? Why is there so many guns? Yes, I like the G.I. Joe squad. That's fun. There's just, yeah. And then the kicker, Craven has to do all of his crazy whatever herbs and stuff to get Peter to get knocked out for 2 weeks. But a wall took him out this time. What is Spider-Man's
Yep.
power level at this point in history?
Right.
He's either amazingly strong or just complete buffoon. There's no consistency. Like, he swings so hard, he hits himself in the head, and that's what passes him out enough that they can bring him into the asylum to drug him further. I don't buy it. It's just, the setup to get him into this asylum makes no sense. It's written in such a heavy stylistic way that I, as a reader, I'm not vibing with it. It really pulls me out of the reading experience. I know, Mike, you said that Nocenti writes children well. Here, I disagree completely. To me, they're not written like children. They're written like how movies portray children as adults, but either incredibly naive adults or, in the brother's case, as like a full adult man.
Yeah,
taking care of.
He's definitely gonna be like a villain in the near future.
Like,
I agree.
understand-
You're right. The brother was written like an adult, but I thought the daughter was written well.
You know what really pissed me off about how the whole issue is getting him into the asylum? Is that the cliffhanger isn't even him in the asylum.
He's just on the
Good
ground.
It's just him
Good
on the
point.
ground, and then
Which
because
we've
I
seen
didn't
in
know we were reading like a continuous thing. I mean, I think you mentioned it, but I went into the next issue. I was like, oh, weird, it's picking right up. Oh, he's in the asylum. I was like, would have been a great cliffhanger, but you
Yep.
just biffed it.
Because, like,
Good point.
for me, the cliffhanger of Peter Parker Spider-Man in a pool of his own blood at the bottom of an alleyway, that's just regular everyday Peter. Like,
All the
he's
time.
Just
Right.
gonna get up like he fell on some garbage. All right, end of the night, go home.
What a
Yeah.
weird issue to end Spider-Man on. He's dead. Like
They could have had like shadowy figures coming over him or like in lab coats or something at that last panel to be like, oh crap, these people are gonna unmask Peter, which we'll get to how stupid. But yeah, that's my opinion. We started off strong, and then immediately took a left turn, and we stay that way. We keep going.
Go
I
ahead.
think the way to fix this is to have had that mad scientist guy and the husband the same person. If you make him like a scientist working for Kingpin and he's doing all of these studies to help his wife who has like a similar like problem, then it gives him
Motivation,
it gives him motivation and like a reason to like keep no kids, you got to stay at home. And then like the kids can be like, okay, well we know that dad took mom to work, so we know how to get there. Like lines start to like follow each other, right?
Yeah.
It's just so
it's not
strange.
it's not like he's an established character. You could have done anything with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this man doesn't love his wife. I don't get that vibe. So like,
He doesn't
does
love his children either.
He does not like confrontation with his children. That's it.
yeah,
here's
this
a-
man, he hates his wife, he hates his kids, but yet doesn't
Yeah.
want them to go, like, let them go, dude. Not your problem.
So let's quickly touch on the art before we move on, because there's a different inker in each issue. The first one, again, penciled by Cynthia Martin, but it's inked by Steve Leialoha. Leialoha. Who
Yeah.
you're familiar with, Jolie. What did you think of the art in the first one, Jolie?
It looks like you know those advertisements in the mall tie-ins?
Oh, God.
It has the same
Is that
sort
a compliment, or, yeah?
Did you
I don't
see
know.
them?
I don't know yet. But it's got that like if Barbie had a comic in the 70s, it's got the same feel. The same like this yeah.
They do
the
look
same,
like Barbies.
line,
I liked it, but
line
anyway.
quality. It was also very hard from a storytelling perspective to follow. It was good, but it was almost like the way that you see modern comics being more cinematic, where there weren't through lines in connecting the art, the way that and the connect sentences. So it was like a lot of. I'm talking about like I'm saying it's a Thanksgiving Day parade that they're all watching, the raid balloon.
It's the annual
Yeah.
exterminators parade in New York.
Yeah, where the weirdly
Local-
the balloon gets
Local
stuck.
306.
They're always doing parades and fireworks. That page specifically, the 4 different panels, it's like they don't connect. But I like this artist though. Technically, they're very skilled. I feel like they have like a background in. I read a little bit about Cynthia Martin. I wonder if they have more of a background in like illustrative fashion.
Could be.
But and I'm surprised that Leialoha has inked it this way. It's very thin.
It's very like scratchy, and it has a more like gothic creepiness to it, which I think fits with the overall tone of the story.
Right.
It almost mirrors the cover itself. Like I think that the tone of the inking for sure matches the story.
Yeah, like the swaths of black are just actual strokes and lines built up, which is cool. I like how it's inked. I really like the art.
And it's kind of I think it's the issue that fits the story. Like it's the art that fits the story the most out of all 3. Amazing, and we'll get to that later. But Amazing feels too clean, like every other issue of Amazing. Like it feels like that like classic comic. And then I think Spectacular maybe just doesn't push it as far with like the line work and stuff. So the faces at times in this issue are a little weird and janky, but there are a lot of faces. So I feel like you're always going to have some that kind of look off. Where it counts, the art is, I think, in particular, pretty good, and again fits the tone of what's happening.
Okay, well, with that, we still got 2 more issues to talk about, so we're going to jump.
Yeah.
I guess we'll save our recommendations to the end, but now we're going to jump to Amazing Spider-Man number 295. And again, a great Bill Sienkiewicz cover. This time, Spider-Man is wrapped up in a, what's that called?
Straight jacket.
Yeah, straight jacket. You know, again, it gives you the feeling of like, oh, what is this going to be? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? You know, whatever. But let's crack it open. And who's going to talk about this one? Becca?
It was me.
All right. You're going to tell us what happened in this one.
I am. So, again, super great cover. Like, I agree. I love these covers. We start the issue off with some guys pulling a new patient into the asylum. Turns out it's not a head wound, it's a chest wound. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't.
Rick impaled him, I guess.
I thought he got
Did he get shot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got
Maybe.
shot. Yeah.
I thought the guy fired and he jumped in front of the bullets and fell. That's what I gathered from. But I didn't
okay.
reread.
No, I think they even say that he has a bullet wound.
That makes more sense.
When
So we're
they're
just gonna go with
carting him
it.
away.
Oh, that explains all the blood.
I just thought he cracked his skull open.
He's just a hemophiliac.
Okay.
But yeah, so they're pulling him into the hospital. He's got his stomach wound. The two guys pulling the gurney seem very carefree and do not seem to care, while the woman actually seems to give a shit, which is nice of her. So they're pulling in, and Peter is completely unmasked. And here we go. And so to these people, they found a man dressed like Spider-Man on the ground. Take him in, but nobody thinks he's actually Spider-Man. So yeah, they toss his clothes into the laundry. And this woman, she seems like she's not like everyone else. She's not like the other girls here. She actually seems to care about her job, and everyone else just kind of works here and doesn't care about the patients and doesn't care about torturing them. So we go past, we see a group of what seem to be some of the patients in this hospital. They're all like together, hanging out. You get a kind of a vibe to see what's going on. It seems like everybody here in this exact ward, at least, seems like they're getting along and stuff like that. You get a little, just a glimpse of Mad Dog, or what's his name, Brainstorm, in the background, and you're like, oh, who's that guy? Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, so, and we continue to pull Peter. He gets his own room, and he starts to stir, and they're like, well, he can't be stirring. He's, like, doped up to the max. And I think that's a direct quote. Yeah, he can't be. He's doped up to the max, because they had to give him a lot of drugs to knock him out as much as they'd have to, because he's literally Spider-Man. So he decks a guy. So they restrain him, and they give him more sedatives. The woman asks him if he's okay, and he says that there's a mistake. He's not supposed to be here, wherever here is. And the other guys are just making fun of him. They're like, this guy thinks he's Spider-Man, crazy, right? Even though he, like, literally knocks a guy out with one punch, but whatever. So then there's a couple days later, and Peter wakes up from his sedation, and he's sitting in a wheelchair in a room full of other patients. And you get one patient is arguing with who you think is a shrink because he thinks he's Jesus Christ, but then it turns out that that guy is not actually a doctor. He's another patient who also thinks he's Jesus Christ.
See, that's funny.
Yeah,
it goes nowhere. Then we meet Zero. Everyone goes by their name, or their numbers, not their names here, apparently. Zero's number is not 0, but he goes by 0. And he's a superhero. Or he thinks he's a superhero. He was carrying a woman, and Peter's like, asking questions about, like, what's going on, like, where he is, all that stuff. Gives him a kind of a rundown of the land about, like, that guy thinks he's Jesus, that guy thinks he's Jesus. He's like, why do you carry that guy around? I was like, I try to help out as much as I can. Seems like a genuinely nice guy, wears a cape, just classic stuff. And then Peter tries to remember why he's there and who he is and what's going on. He's like, no, we shouldn't be locked up in here, even though at this point he has no idea why any of these people are in the hospital. But he's like, we should be fighting, blah, blah, blah. So Peter starts rallying the troops, and it turns out he's got this female nurse on his side, and she believes that he shouldn't be here as well, but apparently there's nothing she can do. So they start, like, hatching a plan to kind of figure out how to get Peter out of here. But first, she takes the nurse takes Peter to see Vicky, the mom. And we go back to the main plot from the first book, where Peter's one of the things he remembers is his name is Peter Parker. He tells people his name is Peter. He also tells them he's Spider-Man. And he remembers that those kids were looking for their mother. And that's the last thing he remembers. So, and he finds Vicky, and he's like, hey, Vicky, your kids are looking for you. And then he passes out again from too many drugs. We flash back over to the children from the first story, and they're at home, and the daughter is sleeping in the kitchen because it smells like mom, and the son is trying to cook dinner, but he can hold a gun, but he can't crack an egg.
Well, I bet you there's a lot of that in the United States, though, to be honest.
You know what? That's fair. I'll give it to him. I know many men who can shoot a gun but can't cook, so. So then Dad shows back home, and he comes home like nothing's wrong, and he's got the creepiest smile on his
The
face.
Joker,
and
you mean?
Yeah. He's like, "Don't worry, kiddos. I brought microwave pizza," and they're
Your
like, "Get away
favorite.
from us, you monster!" Don't you remember we had guns held to us on a rooftop earlier? So the daughter, she hides behind her brother. And then the husband, he gets upset and he starts yelling at them. And he's like, "No, you need to go bring your blankets to the bedroom." And she doesn't want to. She starts sobbing. And he's like, "What can I do?" And the brother's, his name's Jacob. He's like, "You can bring our mom home." And he's like, "I can't do that. Jacob, Jesus." And then he breaks a bunch of glasses. And he also admits to his children that he works for Kingpin's mom. So then back at the hospital, we got Mad Dog 2020, who's got his name tattooed on his chest in case he forgets it. The doctor's talking about his experiments with him more, and about how he's like infiltrated his subconscious so that this guy basically only listens to him, and when he's asleep is when he thinks he's awake when he's asleep, or he thinks he's asleep when he's awake. Anyway, regardless, he fights whoever this doctor wants him to fight, and he's very, very, very aggressive. And I guess his real name's Jimmy, and he gets mad because the nurse calls him Jimmy. It's like, no, there's only numbers here. So then we go back to where all the other patients are in the mental ward with Peter and the gang. And there's a salesman trying to sell straitjackets to the staff of the hospital in the room with all the patients. I understand that this is like a mob-owned mental hospital. Like, but still. So Peter's like, "Isn't this crazy? They're trying to steal straitjackets while you guys are right here." And everyone's like, "I guess that's kind of crazy. Everything else is crazy. It happens." So Peter gets out of the wheelchair, and he gets this big rush of adrenaline, and he grabs the straitjacket off the dummy, and then puts it onto the salesman. And one of the orderlies tries to grab him, and he suplexes him over his shoulder onto the ground, and nobody still thinks he's Spider-Man. Except the nurse is like, "Whoa, this guy, he's full of drugs, but I'm so proud of him." And yeah, that's what she says. Yeah, she says they'll punish him with drugs, but I'm so proud of him. All right. So then Peter tries to rally all of the patients again, and he's like, "Hey, we shouldn't just be doped up with so many drugs. Like, we should have more freedom. We should be able to think for ourselves." And he instigates a riot. Where they
But not
basically,
really.
yeah, they destroy a couple pieces of furniture before the orderlies come and sedate them all. And then they get Peter because I guess his spider sense doesn't work since he's hopped up on so much drugs. And they sedate everybody else and bring them back to their rooms. Peter's ashamed because it was him who got everybody to get more hopped up on drugs. And then he goes to bed. And then the last page we have, it looks like the doctor, he's talking to his nurse, he's like, "I can't wait to give Spider-Man a lobotomy." So I think he thinks it's actually Spider-Man.
Yes.
This is the weakest part.
Yeah, it's strange because some people know that it's Spider-Man and some people don't.
Yeah, the doctor has like an inner monologue where he's like, "Little does everybody else here know he's actually Spider-Man," and you're
Yeah.
like, "Well,
What?
okay."
What?
See, I can just say quickly, I've written many, Andrew, you've written screenplays before, I've written screenplays. This is one of those moments where, like, your friend comes to you and goes, this part doesn't make sense because they know he's Spider-Man, but no one believes that he's Spider-Man, but this guy says he knows, you know what I mean? It doesn't... Let me write this little dialogue there to explain it, but it still doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's what this is right here. Draft 1. We call this draft 1, right?
There's a few bits of like added dialoguing where like there's that moment where they're like, "Is that a guy?" And they're like, no, it's just a dummy. And I was like, yeah, because the fucking art was so inexpressive on all the other
Right.
guys' faces that I didn't know.
Yep, 100%.
I was thankful for
okay.
the clarification.
Oh boy. What do you
Yeah,
say
I
about
love
this?
the crew of exposition mental hospital patients that just tell you what's actually happening because I wouldn't know.
Right. Which is in every, again, it's like, okay, there's a way to do this. Like, we've seen this in, what's that movie, you know, the movie we mentioned, Cuckoo's Nest. We've seen this in 12 Monkeys. There's a way to do this, but it's like they're just not doing it, you know?
Not like this.
No.
Yeah, it seems also really strange because, like, they don't show us that that they belong here, really. Like, they kind of be like, oh, look at those two guys, they're Jesus, but we don't see them, like,
Yeah.
pretend
Why are they in
or,
King?
like,
Why
do
are they in King?
things.
Why are they in Kingpin's ward then?
It makes no sense. Like, what do those guys add? Or, like, I think it's the next issue. There's, like, the girl that does arts and crafts, and she's like, this is so bad, I did it with my foot. It's like, is this supposed to be like, are you trying to compare that it's bad, like, or did you actually do it? Like, none of it makes any sense.
Right,
Like,
right.
there's no like proof
What's
that
the point?
they're like,
And they kept repeating
that
it
they
too.
belong there?
It happened.
Yeah.
It happened multiple times.
yeah. So
Which- yeah.
it's strange, and like, I don't know. They all seem completely competent. They just feel like friends hanging out and lounging around on a couch watching TV and stuff. Like, it never really feels like they're in an asylum. So at no point in here am I like, oh no, Peter is in danger. Something bad is going to happen. Or like, man, I really wish Peter could get out of here. Besides
Good
the
point.
fact that it was extremely boring.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
And
Like-
it's really strange. And I don't care. I'm going to spoil it even before we get to the next issue because I had to read somebody else's online synopsis of what was happening to understand why we get this Kingpin funded mental health facility. Is because apparently this doctor and the arranger have made a deal with Kingpin so that they can use the patients to experiment on, this is what I mean by this is where I spoil it. We never get that piece of information. We're meant to glean it from like small, what I'm assuming once we move on to the next issue, small panels and clues from those panels. Just fucking say it. Just say it. Like, it would help the story loads if you just told us what the fuck was going on.
It would also make sense too, like, oh, we find out like, oh, these guys are actually just normal people. They're just being drugged to think that they're crazy so they can experiment on
Right.
people, right?
Yeah.
And then, but no, it's just Peter gets out at the end. Everybody else is still stuck in this shitty asylum where they're experimenting on people, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the thought that like these are people that like Kingpin couldn't have killed without it being too suspicious, so he just locks them up in here and drugs them a bunch so that
Yeah, he was just way over budget on assassins that year, so he
Yeah,
just
so, like-
needed to shuffle him into the next financial quarter.
that's why Vicky's in here, right? She
Yeah.
was threatening to call the police, so they're like, no, we'll
Right.
just. But she was already clearly mentally ill before.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm not saying she needed to be in an asylum, but she definitely needed help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, if the dad would have been like one of the scientists being forced by Kingpin to experiment on them, it would make sense that she already has problems because he is doing it to, get research on ways to help her. And it would also be another reason why they would he would want to put her into the home rather than being killed off by one of the Kingpin's henchmen, right?
Yeah. And if it would be fabulous if the twist was that he's having a crisis of, or the overarching element was that he's having a crisis of conscience about what he's being asked to do because he keeps talking about economics with his son. So
Yeah.
it would, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you know, we gotta make ends meet, but also I gotta experiment on people for my boss.
And
But one of those people now is your mom. Like, that would make sense.
and I just want to know, are all these people, were they like, did they have some sort of mental illness before Kingpin needed to bring them in here to shut them up, like Vicky? Or do they just here to so that they're not out in the world? Like, I don't, like, the way
It's
that the
never
writing
clear.
is,
It's never
you don't,
clear.
I don't know
Right.
if it's because of the drugs that they're acting odd, or like, is there actually like some, like, are these people sick, or
I think
what's going on?
I think what is supposed to be happening is that this is just an asylum, and Kingpin is like paying off guards and scientists or whatever to take people and experiment on them to use at night as like henchmen, and they're put back into this facility. So I think it's supposed to be a real facility, but it's just kind of being paid off
and there's
by
like
Kingpin.
a few of them are like he gets to put people in there because he pays the bills.
Right. I
Okay.
think that's what's supposed to be happening. It's definitely not clear, and
Good enough. Good enough.
You definitely don't believe that any of them should be in there.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make sense. And this is like the Mad Dog Ward. This is where all of the like people that need to be sedated. It's like, these people aren't dangerous. What is going on?
There's just so much there's so much outdated like
right.
ableist like language used in it that you're like, oh, okay, it's the 80s. I gotta remember that.
And on top of that, there's no security around. Like, there's nobody like watching them if they're that much of a danger as they're trying to like tell us that they are. They're not like separated and like have like security measures. It feels like they're just like walking around the building doing whatever they want. It just feels,
Yeah.
I don't know, like
they're-
not like the thing that they're trying to tell us it is.
I also like every member of the staff is so amoral. And then there's like the one nurse, and I'm like, how did she even get
This
wouldn't-
job.
This far.
How did
Yeah.
when did they interview her and like they forgot to ask her, hey, like, do you care if like we like just treat these people like human pieces of garbage? And she was like, I do actually. They'd be like, oh, sorry.
You're hired.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just jump to I mean, has everyone talked about this issue yet? Becca?
I mean, I reviewed it and added my commentary. But I love that they're like, they're taking him into the asylum. They're like, and here's Mad Dog 2020. Like, they just roll right past him. Like, there's no secrets. Where are the secrets?
Right, good point.
Like, everything's just out in the open.
on him.
This guy's gonna be a human weapon. This guy's Spider-Man. Like,
You know, like there's an old rule about writing. You're supposed to withhold information. This story dumps everything right up front, but then it kills all the mystery. It kills all of the, like, there's nothing to, it's like, I think it was Josh that said there's no sense of danger, right? If they would have just left certain things as a mystery, being like, oh no, what's going to happen to Peter Parker? But they never really do that. And so everything is up front, everything's explained up front, and there's so much crap thrown in your face, and it's like they don't know what to focus on, and so it's all just a big mess. That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Let's
I
jump
just
to
find-
go ahead, Becca.
I was just gonna say, just continuity-wise, it's just like, why doesn't she just stop drugging Peter if she thinks he's Spider-Man? Like, for a couple hours, just give him a break. Then
Right.
I'm sure he has one of the best healing factors in the Marvel universe, right? Even at this point, he's got a good one.
She's clearly got the hots.
Yeah, like, what drugs are these? And I just want to know, like, what drugs are these? How is it that this guy who works for the Arranger, who works for Kingpin, has Spider-Man demasked, drugged up, but Kingpin does not know? Like, that the man who knows everything for every plot ever doesn't know this. So that's fun. I feel like it's just nobody. The fact that his mask's off, all right, cool. But he tells people his name's Peter. It just is frustrating.
Right.
Because all of these people know that he's Spider-Man now. And I'm sure it will never come up
It's never
again.
mentioned again. But anyway, let's talk about the art briefly. This issue is inked by Kyle Baker, which I actually think this issue, if anything, is the best one, to be honest, with the inks. I really like Kyle Baker's inks. We made a joke about the Joker smile from the father. Mm-hmm. It is over the top, but Kyle Baker is always, his art is always kind of a little bit over the top and satirical, and to be honest, I think his inks fit this story the best. But G.I. Julie, what do you think of the inks in this one?
I like them. I thought, excuse me. I said that Steve Leialoha was thin, but his are even thinner. Like his line work is even thinner. But in a different way. There's a lot of, it adds detail and adds like movement. Still, since it's the same pencils underneath, you still get the same lack of visual storytelling, or not as clear. Like it's not as cohesive with the dialogue or the thought bubbles. The faces are weird in this one. Does anyone else get that? Like they don't match.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems
I
like
really didn't like Parker in this one. In fact, like it just didn't. He doesn't look like Peter Parker.
Yeah.
In a lot of it, it's weird.
I think too they change from scene to scene sometimes.
Was this the issue where the guy attacks the one guy and like his face is all like, and like it just looks.
The next.
Yeah, that's the next one.
Because I was okay. All right.
This one, I feel like there were scenes where it almost felt like it was washed out, like the white balance was too high. Particularly the I don't know. This might be an updating thing because we're reading a digital version that has been like remastered, so it's not the original. But when the scientist is talking to 2020 Thunderwave or whatever his name is,
Brainstorm.
Thunderwave.
No, it doesn't matter.
Like the inking is not good at all. Particularly on like the one panel where he's like gritting his teeth and he's like looking up to the sky. It just feels wrong. Like again, it's like washed out. It feels like way too bright.
I do think it comes from like the re-rendering that was done, like to bring it to bring, like, I think like bringing it to like Marvel now or whatever, it definitely made it a little too crisp. And like, I think the old, like, the old weight paper and coloring suited this style of art better, that I think it doesn't suit it to look this clean.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I kind of got off on it.
Yeah, it's like people have to realize, like, it's just like old 60s music was created for AM radio. So when you remaster it for like stereo, it sometimes doesn't sound right. And it's kind of like this, like you said, Barry. It's like this was created for cheap newsprint and it looked good on cheap newsprint. But when you put it on a computer, it's like, oh, it's like harsh and the colors are too bright. And you got to adapt it to the medium, right? So... Yeah, definitely.
I think another issue for me in the art, it's not necessarily anything technical, but more on the design choice side. I felt like the only inmate that I recognized from scene to scene was Zero. I felt like he was the only one that had anything distinct about him. Like he was the big guy, bright yellow shirt, and he was always wearing the like tiny red cape. So that was like something about him that I could always point him out in a scene, and I knew who he was. Every other character, I thought I didn't know who they were until I was reading dialogue to see what was happening in the scene. Like the two people that thought that they were Jesus. The second that scene was over, I don't think I could pick them out from the like big group of people. There's like also like characters that are like in one panel and that's it, and they're in the forefront, and I'm thinking like, ooh, who's this person? Like there's in this issue, there's this woman that's dressed all in black, and she's wearing one of those. It looks like she's wearing one of those like security belts that the like dangerous inmates had on, and she had like the bracers on her wrist. It looked like they were like chained to her belt, and she's like facing like right up into the camera, and we're seeing dialogue with Peter and Zero way in the background, and I'm like, oh, she's spying. What's going on? And then she's just gone. She's never in another panel ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's just strange, I think, sometimes that like who is chosen to be focused on, and like some characters again don't have enough like character or character design to them that they're memorable from scene to scene. And I think that is a huge problem with this issue and making me care about the characters. Because again, I think Zero's the only one that I remembered when Becca was like recapping, because I've read this like a few days ago, so he was the only one that I could have told you before the recap who he was and what he looked like. Everybody else is just, I don't know, probably jeans and a t-shirt. That's what everybody's got on in this issue.
Well, see, it's funny because like, you know, it's, to me it's like when you go back and watch, you know, 80s cartoons or whatever, I remember them a certain way, but when you go back and watch them, you're like, wow, it's like in your head, I remember it better than what's actually there. And I feel like this gag with the two people that think they're Jesus, I totally remember that joke, but when you go back and look at it, it's so confusing because like they're talking, it's funny, but then the guy leaves, but then there's like a panel in between, and there's an explanation for what's going on, but then you never see them again. And in your head, you're like, well, I read that when I was a kid, it was a good joke, but it's almost like your 10-year-old brain was translating it to make it better, and now when you go back and read it, you're like, it actually isn't that good, you know? But I think it probably happens a lot.
Yeah, I think honestly I could forgive some of this story's like downfalls if they introduced these characters and had something interesting about them. Like if these two issues was just like Peter's life in this ward, like interacting with all of the other inmates, at least there'd be something like interesting and new happening to Peter, and I'd get something out of it. But I feel like everything is just so kind of like bland in these parts that I don't remember it, and it's because it's not important to the story either. It's just like I don't think it works.
Okay, so now we're gonna see one more issue to go, guys. You still with us, everybody? I can see.
I also didn't like the art.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh, Becky, you didn't like the art?
Shocking.
Okay. Okay, now we're gonna go.
No, I just don't like people's faces. There's like too much dialogue and no expression. So it's like, are we a lot or are we not a lot? What's going on? I like the Joker smile though.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, now we're going to jump to Peter Parker, number 133. I'm going to summarize this issue. Again, we get a really cool cover. I love it.
Yep.
Then, now on the cover, it's Spider-Man. He's kind of like trying to get away from the Doctor. And who's the other guy? I don't even know who
Probably
that is.
Mad Dog.
Mad Dog?
Yeah.
Brainstorm?
I think it's Brainstorm, because he's got the X on his head, right?
Okay.
He's drawn after Egon Schiele.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
Austrian expressionist.
I knew that.
Yep. And it shows, I like it because it's like, Sienkiewicz is like, this is garbage, but I'm going to flex my fine art, like, knowledge and skill. Like, Bill Sienkiewicz is amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think he is a fine artist. Just happened to be working in comics, but anyway. Okay, so now Peter Parker 133. So now we have art inked by Joe Rubinstein. I think somewhere earlier in the review, someone said that the issue of Amazing looked like a typical issue of Amazing. I'm going to argue this issue looks like a typical issue of Spider-Man because it's Joe Rubinstein who inked, I think, like 90% of all Marvel comics in the 80s. That's why it looks like this. Kind of like the most... So this is the most typical Marvel issue. That's okay, though. So basically, Spider-Man, he's like drugged up. Peter Parker is saying, I am Spider. He can't get out the man. So everyone's joking around like, this guy thinks he's a spider. Oh, and by the way, did you notice on page 2, there's a little cameo by Rogue? See the girl with the green top on?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Cynthia Martin drew Rogue in the Marvel Universe Handbook, so I think that's a little in-joke there. It's not really her.
She
but...
doesn't have the white hair though.
Well, it's kind of like a joke. It's not Rogue, but she's dressed like Rogue.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like a little joke. Anyway, and so
But yeah, that's the girl that draws the pictures with her feet.
Okay.
Is that a Rogue? Is that a Rogue thing? Is it like a Rogue inside joke? I don't
know. The feet thing is
No,
not...
she just is wearing the same shirt
Yeah,
that Rogue
just
wears
a
in
green
the
shirt.
I thought the left foot thing was just a reference to that one that one artist who could only paint with his feet.
the movie My Left Foot.
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah,
played.
I'm sure it is. This is just a hodgepodge of ideas here, right?
Hodgepodge. Oh my god.
Unlike our regular podcast, which is always concise and clear and focused.
No, I meant the comics.
Oh, also that, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I don't even know where we are in the plot, but basically, Peter Parker's drugged up. Brainstorm, or whatever his name is. What is his name? Is it Brainstorm? No, Captain Zero.
Hodgepodge.
Hodgepodge is his name. So basically, this one woman sees Peter Parker as kind of like, like hope that, for something better to come. And he's like, yeah, whatever. There's all this dialogue. I don't know what's going on. We cut back over to the kids. The kids are living in squalor, like basically raising themselves, right? Like they're living on 7-Up and popcorn, which I still am doing right now. And the father comes home and he's like, the kids have figured out that he's a mobster. The girl pulls another gun on him. So now, how many guns has been pulled on this guy? Like 3? I don't even
He
know.
does work for the mob, and he is an American.
They all have one.
Yeah.
They have a right to them, Mike. Each citizen.
What was like the opposite of Chekhov's gun be? Because that's
Yeah,
what this.
good
That's
point,
what all
good
this
point.
is. It's like we don't get we just get the payoff of the gun. We don't get the setup of it at all.
That's a good point. Look at it's like there's so many panels of a little girl holding a gun on their father. I love it.
Also, I'm sorry, but they're living in squalor in their father's apartment. Is that pornography beside the VCR?
No, that's the movie they're watching. I think like it's supposed to be
Vixen,
Silence
you
of the
mean like
Lambs.
box? What does it say?
Vixens
It's
with something.
Okay, yeah. If it says Vixens with something,
Maybe
yes.
then.
I have
Correct.
the original issue, so I'll go check it out later. I'll get back to you on that.
Oh man.
But basically,
Anyway.
okay, here's the thing. I read this issue, and then all of a sudden the father showed up in the Mad Dog ward. I'm like, when did he decide that he was going to try and break out his mother? Oh, I guess it was this scene.
Yeah, he tells him.
Yeah, because they're all mad at him, and he's like, what can I do to make it up to you? They're like, can you break mom? What do they say?
We keep telling you, just bring mom back.
Yeah,
He's
bring
like,
mom home. Okay, fine. And then I see, remember how I said that Nocenti can write kids, or at least little girls? He's like, we'll have to leave here, drive far away, get new identities, new names. And the little girl's like, oh boy, can my new name be Charlotte? We'll see. See, that's good writing. Anyway.
Is
After she had the
Is
gun.
it now?
compliment?
And
Bang
yeah, she's
bang,
still-
you're dead, Daddy.
Yeah.
Can I be Charlotte? It's like what?
Jesus.
Okay, next scene. I love the scene. The arranger goes in to talk to Kingpin, and he explains to Kingpin, aka the reader, about exactly what this Mad Dog Ward thing is, so that we can all understand. And the Kingpin's like, arranger, what did I hire you for? And he's like, to make decisions? Then make them. Right? So Kingpin doesn't want anything to do with it.
I was so upset he didn't say arrange.
I know.
Arrange things.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Then
didn't
arrange.
hire him
Yeah.
to like give him pointers.
He's not the decisioner.
See?
We already had the question. We dealt with him.
Yeah.
Also,
Me-
the answer.
Meanwhile, the
Yeah.
irony of Kingpin like missing that Spider-Man's in this ward just because he won't listen to this one guy.
I know. It's
Ridiculous. Also, before we move on, I want to point it out because it's so ridiculous. Aside from this whole conversation, is that Kingpin is trying to snip a blunt with sewing scissors. Anyway.
No, he's just
No,
got
he's-
such big meaty hands
Those are
that they're just
regular
regular
scissors.
scissors.
yeah, I think you're right.
But it's still not a cigar. You know what I mean? How cigars have specific scissors?
Oh,
It's a
do they? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have
got
like a little-
cigars.
All right, like a little thing that chops off the top.
Yeah. It's not even shaped like that.
You know, like the Mission Impossible 2, the finger.
Yeah.
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 Anyway.
A skinny cigar for such a big man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they do.
We
I
need to
guess
stop.
they do have little scissors that you can get for cigars.
But anyway,
Look
he
at him.
must have been cutting off the ends of his crochet. Because my sister looked over my shoulder while I was reading this, actually. And she was, why would you use those scissors for that? That's not what those are for. Anyway, she's a fabric, fabric artist, fiber artist, whatever you call them. She knits. She
He's a
noticed.
sewer. Okay. So, cut back to the Mad Dog Ward. They're experimenting on what's his name. What you call him again? Thunderdog.
Brainstorm.
Thunderstorm.
It's brainstorm.
Brainstorm. Kill, destroy, hate, whatever. So we cut back to some scenes in the Mad Dog Ward. They don't go anywhere. Girls dancing, blah 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 blah. I'm skipping here. I read all this. You guys, I've read this story 15 times. I don't remember what happened. Okay. So basically, Peter Parker starts another riot, punches a few people. There's a fight, right?
Well, there's a guy that
Yeah.
there's a ghost man that shows up.
Yeah.
That's the guy I was talking about.
There's a ghost man that shows up that gives Peter the opportunity to like escape.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think somebody unleashes like the spirit from the Grudge into the place.
It's like the head is shaped like a Tic Tac, and it's like squiggly lines for eyes and big squiggly line for mouth. Like if you were told to make a cartoon ghost, draw a cartoon ghost, it would look like this. And
Yeah.
it's not just one panel. This is what this person looks like the entire issue, and we don't know who this is. No nose, no ears. It's just completely smooth face with like big round eyes and squiggly mouth.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
And you know how Josh was mentioning tertiary characters who have no consequence on the story? Two of these types are just standing in the next panel and they're like, fine morning for a psychotic episode. And that is the explanation, the exposition that we get for this.
Yeah, like this guy too, he's got like the one guy that says, "You mean?" And the other guy's like, "Yep." He's got like a black shirt on with like huge block letters written on his shirt. Like I am positive we have never seen this dude before wearing this shirt.
Yep.
Who is this?
Who knows?
It's a big old mess.
It doesn't make sense.
So yeah.
Everyone who's crazy is fighting.
So here's the thing. All of a sudden, the father shows up, and like I said, when I read this like yesterday, I was like, "Wait, when did he decide?" Oh yeah, okay. So the father shows up, puts a gun to the doctor's head. They lead him out, and then Peter Parker is. Oh wait, Peter Parker. What?
You missed the fight with Brainstorm.
No, I mentioned that, but then did Peter Parker already leave, or did? Yeah.
No, he's there with the one good scientist.
Okay.
And the father walks out of the building with the gun to his head, and the scientist and Peter walk out behind them, and there's the police waiting there already.
Right.
But he still holds him hostage. Gets into the back of the car with Peter driving and the scientist in the passenger seat.
Insane, you're right.
And they drive away, and we see Zero on the roof. I guess he escaped as well at some point. We never get a conclusion as to what happened. We don't know where Peter drove off to. We don't know what the guy did to the scientist. Nothing. It's nothing. We cut to the next day.
And Peter comes back disguised in a like a.
It's like
He dyed his
Magic
hair red
Malone.
and
Exactly.
put a fake mustache on.
What in the heck is going on? Right?
Because
was
people would
Peter?
recognize him.
Yeah, that's Peter Parker in
I have to
disguise.
assume he was using an accent, like a really
Yeah.
bad fake Irish accent.
And he goes there to take pictures because to get a scoop on the story about this like ward being mismanaged, and the Kingpin's like, haha, I'm always one step ahead of you, Spider-Man, and he leaked it to the press, so everybody's already there already. So he's like, oh, drats. Well, I guess there's no point doing this story. And as he's walking out, the scientist is like, we find out that the scientist quit the next day after kidnapping one of the scientists and getting away while the cops watched. She just went back to work the next day to pack up her stuff, I guess. And then, and then we see the family having a great time, going on a cross country road trip, eating pizza, and they're happy. And the wife is cured of her schizophrenia, and we're all each one of them's got a gun, and they're riding off into the sunset to be cowboys out west. What is going on?
I like that all their marriage problems are over, and the dad is fully redeemed.
Oh my goodness.
He sold his wife to Kingpin, but it's fine.
Yep.
Sorry we hijacked that at the end there, Mike.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. Again, there's a few there's things I like. Like I like the idea that the girl kind of, she, they recognize each other. He really is Spider-Man. And he looks at her and he's like, yeah. And I like the fact that they get away, but just take out that panel of the cops, because that would make it insane. I like the fact that the Kingpin came in and kind of intervened and kind of covered his own tracks. That's a cool idea. But then the fact that like you said, everything is just supposed to be hunky-dory, even though he just locked his wife up in an insane asylum for however long, a few weeks, sold her out to the Kingpin. It's crazy.
When they're driving off with the scientist, who is just I just have to say it, is just budget Hugo Strange.
Yeah.
When they're driving off, I don't know if it's Peter or the dad, because their faces are indistinguishable from one another. But they're we're gonna take you somewhere you won't be able to get out of, and then they never go. They don't go back to him. They're just Peter just locked this guy up underground and left him there with the mob dad.
Right. Oh boy.
I do enjoy that Peter, in his semi-drugged out state, couldn't figure out how to put back his Spider-Man costume on, so he just ties it around his neck like a kid.
Yes, that is cool.
Like heroes.
See, there's little touches like that are cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we've come to the end of the story. Barry Helmer.
I still don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't quite know what happened, but this is your first time reading it. What's your overall impression?
Oh man, what a fever dream this was. I said, in issue 1, I was sort of oh, what's going on? And just progressively, almost panel by panel, this thing was losing me. And then by the end, I'm just I only read this thing 3-4 hours ago, and we're talking about it now, and I'm just still oh my god, what?
Yeah.
That happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No, I totally agree with you. Sometimes when I read some of these comics and they're dry, my eyes just glaze over and I start reading, and then something happens and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go back because I missed it. I was just trying to get through it as quickly as possible. And even when I went back to reread what was going on, it didn't make any sense. I probably read this one 3 times. Genuinely, I probably went back and read all of these panels 3 times because I just didn't understand half the stuff that was going on. The weird ghost face guy that just shows up. The fact that they kidnap this scientist by gunpoint while the police officers watch.
And let them go.
As they're driving, and they let them go. They don't say anything. There's no dialogue from the cops. As
Peter Parker, who is a well-known person in New York by this point, has met most of the cops in the city.
They're driving away and they say, that's it. The gig's up. We're going to hand you over to the police. It's excuse me, you just drove by them. What are you talking about? And then it ends with Zero on the roof haha, I love it when the good guys win. I was just completely lost as to what was happening. This one is a stinker. I think the other two have some redeeming things about them, but this one I think is just like all a mess. Like I don't know. I'm like the art is great. There's some like good dialogue in parts, but overall this is definitely the weakest of the three. I don't understand why half of the things happened. Peter's escape wasn't because of something he did. It was just happenstance that this fight broke out. So he's like, okay, I'm out of here then, I guess. So like, it's not even anything that he did to get himself out of this situation. Like everything in this issue happens by circumstance. Like nothing really matters. There's no like event that starts or the characters do something to change what's going on. Things just really happen because we need to finish this up because we can't have Peter in this asylum for the next issue. So let's wrap this thing up, get it done and over with, and I guess the bad guys lose, good guys win. We're done. Like it's so quickly rushed. I was not a fan of this one.
You know what? Fever Dream I think is it's a positive thing to say about Nocenti's work because again, it's like you said, I don't know what's going on, but there are cool moments, but they don't add up. But it's almost like a subconscious stream of consciousness where she's putting every idea down, but it doesn't add up into a story. But there are some cool elements because it's just whatever comes into her head, but she needs to refine it into a story, I think.
Wasn't Ann Nocenti writing Daredevil?
Yes. From
this for sure should have been a Daredevil story.
She created Typhoid Mary.
Yes.
Right. So
everyone's favorite sexual assaulter.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wrote Daredevil from about 238 to about 290 something. Yeah. And the early ones are really good, but then they get really weird.
I know. Yeah, it feels very out of place. It's an interesting idea to put Peter in a situation where he can't be Spider-Man. He is losing all of his powers in a more public place, so he can't really do anything about it anyways if he wanted to without completely blowing his cover. It's already kind of a danger that Peter Parker is in an asylum, but imagine if he started actually doing Spider-Man stuff there, everybody would see it. So that's a super interesting idea. It's just I don't think we see that actually play out. Right. It's a really cool pitch to get me to read a comic, but I don't really see any of the stuff that I'm promised with that premise in these issues.
Good point.
I think the setup was pretty interesting, and there's definitely stuff that grabbed me and wanted me to keep reading. And then by the second one, it was starting to lose me, and I didn't think it was going anywhere. And then the third one, it was just an ending because it needed to end, and not because this is where the story was going. It was.
It felt like somebody had a deadline, was fighting maybe a fever, maybe had a little bit too much NyQuil, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest came on cable late at night, and they just churned, and Nocenti just churned out the scripts overnight and was like, here you go.
Yeah, it's crazy because actually I was wrong about the reader getting clues about what the plot was. This is how lost I was in the third issue. The guy who's conducting the press conference or hosting it gives you the entire plot as if they took her outline or she took her outline and made it his dialogue. It's beat for beat, balloon for balloon. This is the crux of why everything happened. It's but why didn't the 3 issues of Spider-Man I just read tell me that?
Yeah.
Right.
Because that actually is a good plot.
Right.
It's also a Daredevil plot.
Right. Or just have one issue where weird things are happening because Peter is all drugged up. He's trying to figure out what's going on, and all of these stranger things are happening. That Ghostface guy shows up and starts a brawl, and then like all these weird, and we're kind of like seeing the story through Peter's like demented point of view, and we see like this nurse trying to help him the entire time, and then maybe he just ends up back in the alleyway or something, and he wakes up and he sees the press conference later on, or like he's got to go take pictures because it becomes this huge story when it's leaked to everybody. So he has to go back there to take pictures of this press conference, and he gets all the information or something. At least like, it's not like a great story, but at least there's something like interesting happening to Peter, and we're like trying to figure out what's going on and piece it all together. But
I definitely would have started like in media res and just started with him started with him already in there, and it's done in other superhero stuff, but like have him questioning whether or not he's really Spider-Man, like, all that stuff. But no, we don't do anything.
I'll tell you right now, there's a great Batman story written by Peter Milligan, right? You read that one?
I was just thinking, I was like, all of this sounds like a Batman
right,
story.
No, but there is one written by Peter Milligan in the 90s where Bruce Wayne, I can't remember exactly how it is. I don't think it's in an asylum, but he basically comes home one day. Alfred doesn't know who he is. He goes to try and get into the Batcave. The Batcave's not there. And he's like, maybe I just imagined being Batman. And you're sitting in there reading it when you're like 14. You're like, maybe he's right. Maybe he's not Batman. Maybe this was all a dream. But
they adapted that for the animated series. It's called Perchance to Dream.
Yes. See, that's the way you do it, right? At least... you suspend your disbelief for 20 minutes and think, oh, well, maybe he's not Spider-Man. I don't know. But the way that the story is done is completely backward. G.I. Joe.
There was also a really cool episode of Buffy that is the exact same premise as well. Where, like, Buffy's fighting her monster of the week and she gets poked. And it turns out that it's like...
Yeah.
It makes her think that she's in an insane asylum and that she is not a slayer.
Yeah,
it's standard superhero fare, and why wasn't it employed here?
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We've obviously recounted several other really successful
Superman. Whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow? It's about him not knowing what the fuck's going on. Yeah.
Other people have done this well. Unfortunately, it missed the mark.
They even named the nurse Mary. So, like, I thought there was going to be a scene where Peter was going to be like, Mary Jane? Like, that's not even my wife. Like, I've been in here for so long. Like, this, I thought that this, like...
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
What is this creature with the face? I'm, like, trying to look through synopsises online of, like, other people describing this episode, and nobody's mentioning it.
The only thing that makes sense is what Josh said, is that it was supposedly somebody drugged up seeing it, but we didn't get that, so maybe it was an idea that got thrown out.
Yeah.
But it's very scary.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like there's all these cool ideas, but nothing gels. And the other thing about Nocenti, I want to give her credit for, other than the fact that she's really cute, is that she always incorporates politics. She always incorporates politics and like social criticism.
You just invalidated everything
into her stories. And it's like, I admire her for doing it, but she doesn't do it in an organic way. So it's like, on one hand, she's doing something that no one else is doing, but on the other hand, she's doing it so poorly that I think a lot of people don't like her stories. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a good thing that she's cute.
Yes, that's all that matters. That's why I support her.
What's the political, like, point? People with mental illnesses exist?
Right?
No, that they're being abused, I think. I think that's the idea.
Yeah, there was some...
But I don't even know if these people have mental illness or not.
I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
there was some pretty half-attempted
Yeah.
things about how we treat those with mental illnesses that was not really developed. Yeah.
There you go.
It was weird. It was weird to see, like, especially for the 80s, a very rare woman writer penciler combo, and then have it unfortunately have like no good female characters in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really strange that there are like no interesting characters or moments in this that probably any of us are gonna remember past
Ghost.
This episode, besides maybe the ghost.
And
but, like,
Scottish Peter Parker.
Yeah.
yeah. And it takes place in an asylum where they're testing on people. It's essentially like a New Mutants type of scenario where they're testing on regular people and giving them these like powers and then hypnotizing them so they're hitmen. And it's like, it's boring. How is that boring? You know what I mean? Like how is that idea
confusing?
It's such in the most bland story arc in Spider-Man.
Yeah, why don't you have the story kick off with one of these patients kills somebody, like assassinates somebody, and like, you know, I don't know, Ben Urich somehow gets on the story and like is like, well, that's weird. This guy just got out of this asylum and now like he died of an aneurysm right after. What happened to him? Like, but no.
Right, good point.
And Kingpin is running this, right? You're going to tell me that Kingpin doesn't know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker? Kingpin knows everything. Even when it's revealed to him in the future, I can guarantee you he's going to go, I knew the whole time. That's something I already knew. So why not just reveal that Kingpin knows that Peter is Spidey, or this is how he finds out, and he's just like testing him and giving them all these drugs and like putting him up against all of these test subjects to test them to see if they're strong enough to be his like ultimate hitman army that's unstoppable. If they can go up against Spider, there's so many like interesting fun things that you can do with like Peter stuck in an asylum. They're testing on all of these patients and stuff. Are they really crazy, or is it just because they're like testing on them and messing with their brains? But it's just like, yeah, it's just so bland and boring. And I don't think it works. I don't think it really works for Spider-Man. And even if they were to do something different with Peter as like a small little story arc, it shouldn't be like this. No.
Okay, so
I think
go ahead, Becca.
one of my biggest thing is, especially like throughout this whole thing, Peter's like struggling with his identity. We just saw that in Kraven's Last Hunt, him struggling with his mortality. So it's like, I get it. I just, again, it's like, oh, we just did a big story arc and it was so successful. Let's just do it again.
Right.
And there's probably a reason why every top 10 of Spidey stories has Kraven's Last Hunt on it, but does not have whatever they called this 3-part arc.
Life in the Mad Dog Ward.
Yeah. It just, none of it doesn't mesh well. If they didn't keep putting flashbacks to the family, I totally forget that the reason Peter was in the asylum. And then just the conclusion is so weak. It's like, why even bother? Like, sometimes if the conclusion to a story is weak, but the story itself is really, really good, they just didn't really know how to end it, it can be kind of forgiving. But there's, like, no... Like, you 3 issues of nothing for it to end with, well, everything's good. Like, there's no consequences. Nothing happens. Peter doesn't, like, Mary Jane comes home and Peter's like, this happened to me.
Right.
This week. Like, don't go to Paris anymore. It's like it's this episode of like The Simpsons where everything's just the way it was at the beginning at the end. And I don't think every story needs to change continuity forever.
Peter hasn't been to work in weeks.
Yeah, nobody's like looked. Like he was just missing for 2 weeks, and then he's missing again.
Peter gets a cold in the comics, and he like walks around with guilt about missing like a mugging. Meanwhile, he's put away for 2 weeks, and he's like, whatever.
So let's summarize. He was buried underground for a week. Then he was locked in an asylum for 2 weeks. Then he was locked in an asylum for what, a month? So he's had a hell of a honeymoon.
It had to be a couple.
At least
a week, right?
A week? Because Mary Jane is in Paris for a week. So we can assume it's been a week.
So it's about a weekish, yeah.
I think there's a couple like the next day or a couple days later things, but I don't think they go farther than that.
So his first 3 weeks in getting married, his honeymoon is ruined.
By some guy.
Right? Puma.
Mary Jane's ex. Oh yeah, and Puma.
And then he dies and gets buried alive for 2 weeks. and he has to, and like, you know, one of his arch nemesis commits suicide. He's got to fight a giant rat in the streets. The next day he goes into work, and because he can't take a day off, next day after fighting a giant rat in the street, he goes to work, and then on his way home he runs into some kids that are in distress, and that gets him put into the insane asylum for another week. So I wonder what's going to happen next week for Spidey, because
Aliens.
Oh, you just wait and see. Football! Yeah, exactly.
oh right. Oh my god. I forgot.
You thought Spider-Man was getting serious. We're talking about suicide. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about football. Let's go, boys.
Aliens! Yes. Woo! It's going to be a good one.
Oh wait, it is
this is
about aliens?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
a
fuck,
he
I was
plays
just
a
messing
game
around.
of football against aliens.
Against aliens.
Yeah.
Also, the Watcher's there.
And the
Oh, I'm
Watcher
sorry.
watches.
World.
The Watcher
Yeah.
watches football.
Well, it's like, wait, who wrote it? Oh, Jim Shooter. Anyway, okay.
Oh, thank
Let's
Jesus.
save it for next week.
Right.
Okay, so.
Back to this issue
Yeah.
now. Yeah, I also want to point out that this should have, instead of been about mental health, it should have been about gun control. He keeps leaving guns
And
around.
safety.
We can't
for his-
violate this 4-year-old girl's rights, Becca. Come on.
But like, you would think, like, if you look at that picture of like them like in the living room, there's a freaking rifle on the floor.
Why isn't the dad taking these guns?
Like, after your son pointed a gun
right
at
next
you
to
on
the
a
jar of
rooftop,
peanut butter.
you think maybe you'd lock the guns up or at least keep them like at work. I don't.
Don't tread on them.
Bang, bang, you're dead.
Like, the trigger discipline on these kids too. Come on. Also, who did the art for this? Because there's one panel.
It's still Cynthia Martin, but with Joe Rubinstein inking.
Okay, it must be the inks then, because there's one panel where the boy is very anime.
Yeah,
He is so shoujo it hurts.
some panels seem like they're inked by someone else. It's possible that John Romita and Romita's Raiders went in there and fixed some panels. I'm not sure.
But like this panel, this face is straight out of a manga, where he's like, "Father, I'll defeat you."
It totally is. It's wild too that we just forgive this dude for all of his sins. We see him in this issue roll up his sleeves as he's about to beat his daughter. Literally. This is not like, I know, part-time.
Yeah.
Like, he hates abuse.
He's like rolling up his sleeves and he's like clenching his fist, and he only stops because his daughter points a fucking gun at him.
What about like every time this guy comes back from work and like his son is just like, "You don't live here anymore, Dad," and he's almost like, "Shit, I gotta find a new place."
Yeah.
God, you're so grown up. I guess I'm out. I wish that wasn't actual dialogue I was quoting. Like, come on.
God, you're so grown up, but you've even learned how to shoot weapons at me, your father.
He's such a quick draw.
Yeah, and then the whole, like, I just feel bad for this woman. Her story, she is such a random object in these 3 issues. The mom, Vicky, she is such a plot device. It's so unfortunate. Come on, Anne. Like, write better female characters. Like, you've got your other female character is, she's the pretty crazy one. And then there's also the super compassionate nurse. Like, we got stereotype, woman who's an object for the plot.
Excuse me, are you forgetting Tanya, the little girl with the gun?
Oh, you know what?
Checkmate.
Never mind. I take it all back. That's subverting tropes. That's a strong female character right there. I hate it.
Can't recommend.
It's a thumbs down for me too.
And I don't think it would have been as bad if it didn't follow up something that was stupid.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like
It would've just
I
been
did not.
another-
I did not read Craven's Last Hunt,
Fair.
so I can tell you it's still pretty bad.
Fair.
Could you imagine being like, well, Mike, this was you.
Yeah, this
I
is
guess
me.
you yeah. You just read Craven's Last Hunt. That issue. Then the last one. The next month, this issue comes out. How hyped were you?
And I was like, oh, they did it again.
Masterpiece.
Those rascals.
well, it's just. How old were you?
Like, what is this, 87? So I was 11.
Yeah, not that 11-year-olds can't have good opinions, because they can, but I feel like maybe your palate changes and matures a little bit as you
35
age.
years, yeah. How many years is that?
Maybe.
35, 30, I don't know. 30 years, yeah, whatever, you're right.
Stop counting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
things can be good when they're. You can enjoy things and then read look at them later and enjoy them less.
Of course.
I mean, I was a child of the 90s. Everything I go back and rewatch, I'm go, ugh.
I really liked the movie The Phantom with Billy Zane when I was a kid.
I've never seen it.
I mean,
still. We're gonna watch it though.
It is Billy Zane.
Anyway.
But it's just like, sometimes you'll watch old stuff and you're like, wow, the 90s are really transphobic. And then you just can't enjoy any of the things that you used to like.
Yeah. Ace Ventura's gone. And Mrs.
Ooh.
Is
Doubtfire-
it? I've never seen it.
Mrs. Doubtfire's gone.
Yeah.
Yes. What about Tootsie? Ever see Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman?
Oh yeah, that's 100% gone.
I've
Yeah.
never seen that one, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I've never seen it, but I hear good things. I'll have to watch it. We'll see.
I think he was nominated for an Oscar for it.
Which is
But I-
fucked.
And not ironically.
Well, it's not great
Has anybody
now, but
ever
it's better.
ironically been nominated for an Academy Award?
I would love to
I would. I mean,
South Park,
yeah.
they won Best Animated, right?
Wow.
And then they showed up
They won?
high on.
No, they won Best Original Song one year.
Yeah.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I thought when the first movie was nominated for Best Animated Picture or something, they showed up to the red carpet like on acid.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's when they also revealed they were Republicans, right? Because they are.
I don't remember that part.
There, yeah.
Shocking. I'm so shocked. Have I watched an episode of South Park? Yeah, I kind of got that. All the anti-Semitism kind of pointed that way. Not that you can't like things that you disagree with, but come on. Come on, guys.
Hey, we still like Spider-Man, but oof.
Yeah, I love
Oof.
Spider-Man.
Oof.
Well, the good news is the week, like I said, next week we're going to get somewhat back to normal. We're going to be reviewing the beginning of another 3-part story that does not continue into all the issues. Guess what, guys? It's the return of the Sin Eater, one I've been waiting for.
Wait, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
the return of the Sin Eater. We also have the return of Dr. Octopus. And then the
Oh, that's
main
great.
event, Spider-Man plays football against some kids with some aliens watching and the fate of the universe in his hands.
You know what? It sounds fun, and I can't wait to just read some fun Spider-Man
Yeah.
after all this
Right.
doom and gloom and bullshit.
And we want to thank Barry Helmer for joining us this week. I hope you had fun.
Oh, I did indeed.
Sorry you were one episode removed from Craven's Last Hunt.
Yeah.
I know. As soon as you guys said that earlier, I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
And they're like, no. A Mad Dog Ward. That's what we're reviewing.
Just as good, right? Just as good.
It's the same stuff.
We'll have you on again. Hopefully the episode you're on next, Spider-Man will be playing football again.
Yes,
We'll try
that
to
would be nice.
line that up. And that's what you're really here for. But anyway, we want to thank G.I. Jolie and Bex Luthor for joining us.
Welcome.
Woo! And Josh, you can take it from here.
We also want to thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. It really helps when you leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, or you can drop us a line on Twitter at HCT Spidercast. Let us know what you guys think about the issues we're talking about. I'm sure you guys have a lot to say about the Mad Dog Ward in particular. I know it's everybody's favorite. Keep in
Come
touch.
at me, internet.
Let's keep that this conversation going.
Yeah, I particularly want to know what Paul thinks of this 3-issue
I would
run.
love to hear what Paul has to say about
We were
this.
so nice last week, and we love the comic so much.
Yeah.
So I feel like we get a pass for hating the next 10.
And with that, until next Monday, see you later.